Patrick.
Am I starting?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning. My name's Bob Darrell, and I am an alcoholic.
Hey, Bob.
Through the grace of God that I've found and accessed and maintained in my life through the process of the 12 steps, good sponsorship and a willingness to help others, I haven't had a drink or any mind or emotion altering substance since Halloween 1978. And I'm grateful for that. I'd like to open with a moment of silence, if you would indulge me while I open with a prayer that seems to fit very well with workshops of this type. Lord, help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, everything I think I know about others, and everything I think I know about my own recovery, all for a new experience in you, Lord, a new experience in myself, a new experience in my fellows, and a much needed new experience in my own recovery. Amen. I am delighted to be here. I'm curious, how many people were here last night? Okay. Oh, yeah, me too. Yeah. I think. How many Al-Anons are here? Don't be afraid.
I'd say one.
One, okay.
Yeah, Linda's got it.
Linda, okay. How many people within their first year of absolute abstinence? Wow, all right.
Wow. Oh, wow. All right.
Wow. How many in their last year of absolute I got to take her back there.
Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah.
I knew it. Yeah.
I knew it'd be him, too.
Yeah, it would be him. Yeah. I really want to take the moment to thank the committee and Patrick for all the work they've done, bringing us up here. And I've been involved on the service end of a lot of weekends like this. There's a lot of work involved. Patrick drove all the way down to Edinburgh, picked me up in the drive back up here. I got to find out more about Patrick than I ever imagined I needed to know. I never realized I was suffering from a Patrick deficiency, but evidently I was. And
Where is he? I don't see him.
where is Patrick?
Where is he anyway? Is he hiding? I don't see him.
Oh, he missed that. Good. I feel better. I'm glad he missed it. If something is said bad in the woods and there's no one around to hear the tree fall, do you still have to make amends? I mean, what we're going to do today is we're going to do something that's going to be a little bit rushed. We're going to do the very best we can. We never know when Scott and I do this, what's going to come out. This is not rehearsed. This is not like Joe and Charlie where it's the same every time. It spins out of us as whatever is behind the curtain seems to move us. And we don't know how this is going to spin out. Usually, this is about a 13-hour deal that we're going to try to squeeze into just about half that many hours. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I know it'll be good. I trust whatever seems to motivate stuff like this, that it always is good. We're going to break every hour because there's about an hour to an hour 15, because there's a spiritual principle that the mind cannot absorb what the butt can't endure. And so we're going to break about every hour to hour 15. What else? Anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Scott at this point.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Scott Lee, and I am an alcoholic. And grateful beyond my ability to express to be here. I love you with all my heart. What a gift. I like to open whatever I do, those who were here last night, with a quotation from Lois Wilson, co-founder of Al-Anon, who was asked, in a lot of places, they open meetings with a few moments of silence followed by the serenity prayer. And someone asked her one time what she did in those moments of silence, and she said, I invite God to the meeting. That my mentor taught me to treat God like a gentleman. And gentlemen don't go where they're not invited, and they don't stay where they're not made welcome. And so in a few moments, I'm going to ask you for a few moments of silence. I'm going to ask everyone here, if you would please, to invite the God of your understanding to join us. Let's treat God like a gentleman. And then we will endeavor to conduct ourselves in a manner for the balance of the day that will make him welcome. With this many new people, and thank you and congratulations to those of you under a year who are attending. Also, thank you and congratulations to those of you with more than a year that forced these people under a year to come. We'd like to acknowledge both sides of that formula. We think that's fantastic. But with this many new people here, could easily be some folks who do not have a God. And if you're one of those, I'd like to invite you to borrow my God for this time we're here together. I recommend him very highly. He's been keeping me sober continuously since June the 28th of 1984. And he also has a great sense of humor. And if you don't think so, look around the room. I think we're pretty funny, don't you? Yeah. So, Bob and I are working out of the 4th edition. Our newcomers are carrying 4th editions. They're confused enough, and so that's why we carry 4th editions. We both got sober on the 3rd edition. So if you would, let's take a few moments of silence and ask God to please join us and bless us with open hearts, and we'll follow that with the Serenity Prayer. Serenity Prayer. God.
To accept the things I cannot change, courage to change things I can, wisdom to know the difference.
Thank you. Bob and I are not experts and don't consider ourselves to be. We are students. And we have an announcement, Andy?
Yeah. There's 2 cars to be moved. There's a Vic for registration CP06 KSK and a Volvo SX02 XKA. You can move them, please. Thanks very much. Sorry.
No, that's quite all right. This is also pretty intensive. If you find yourself during the day with the need that you want to stay but you can't sit anymore, if you need to just stand against the wall, that'll be fine. We won't be offended by that, not in the slightest. I'm going to do some moving around the book. I think when the big book tells me anything, it's important. When it tells me something twice, it's extremely important. When it tells me something 5 times on 5 different pages, I think they're screaming at me. And I'd like to open with one of those. We'll begin on page 143. If you've skipped the chapter to employers because you're not an employer, or if you skip the chapter to wives because you're not a wife, I have a suggestion. Some pretty good stuff in those chapters. Middle paragraph, page 143. If your man accepts your offer, it should be pointed out that physical treatment is but a small part of the picture. Though you're providing him with the best possible medical attention, he should understand that he must undergo a change of heart. So this part must change. Must. It's popular in some places in the States to say there are no musts in the program, and I'm sure there aren't, but here's one. Must undergo a change of heart. And then it says to get over drinking will require. I wonder if that's important. Require a transformation. That's a total change. Transformation of thought and attitude. Exact same concept on page 58. And I'm not doing all there. I have 2 other places that I'm just not going to do. 4 lines from the bottom of page 58. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas. The result was nil until we let go absolutely. It says the exact same thing. Page 42. Am I going fast enough? Okay. Holler at me if I get going too fast. I'm bad about that. Page 42, about 8 lines from the bottom. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. Several lifelong conceptions out of the window. Page 27. This is Carl Jung, arguably the greatest psychologist of all time, talking to Roland Hazard. And he's just told Roland, no hope at all. Dead center of the page, 27, you see the word ideas. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. Same idea. Let's turn to page 1. And now turn 2 pages toward the front of the book from page 1. You'll be on Roman numeral 29, XXIX on the right-hand side. In the doctor's opinion. First full paragraph begins with the words, on the other hand. Everybody caught up? All right, count up 3 lines above that. It says, this is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire is more than half, by the way, an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. Entire psychic change. 5 places we just looked at all said the same thing. And in plain old Southern Tennessee English, what they said was, some of what I know for sure ain't so. So it isn't what I don't know that's defeating me. It is the things that I know for certain that are actually incorrect, or where the problem is. So it's been necessary for me to release my grip on what I think I know for sure. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas. For me, old ideas are everything I learned through noon yesterday are now old ideas. That I must release my grip on those. My first 2 years of recovery, I surrendered a lot. When I woke up this morning, I did not surrender. I volunteered. In my own enlightened self-interest, I volunteered for service this morning. It's the best deal I've ever had. If I close my mind on surrender, you can't build on that. So if I hold my mind open on surrender, I can then build to volunteer. I have been to a level above that, and I know people that live at a level above that. I cannot close my mind on any of these beautiful things as I get them. One of my mentors said that you're wearing a spiritual garment, and that when you first put on a spiritual garment, your very first time, it is so shiny and beautiful and clean. But eventually it will become tattered and soiled, and you will have to shed it for a new one. And then that one will become soiled and tattered, and you'll have to shed it. If I cannot fall in love with any of my jobs in AA. I have to release my grip on the old assignments. I have to be prepared to do that. And that's what all of that stuff is about for me. Page 61. About a little past halfway down the page in the center, it says, is he not a victim? Everybody got it? Is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well? Rest means to take by force. And what that says is that I'm so insane that I actually believe that if I can get what I want, it'll make me happy. Isn't that insane? When I look at all the thousands of times that I got what I wanted and wasn't rendered happy. And by the way, I didn't fly 4,000 miles to talk to you. I came to talk with you. So we're going to play this one together, all right? Who, when you were a child, wanted a bike? You were certain if you could get a bike, you'd be happy and you got one. Anybody? Great, thank you. Are you happy? No? Oh, let's try another one. Who wanted him or her? Sure, if you could get him, you'd be happy and you got him. Let's see it. Okay. Now, you could be sitting next to them, so I won't ask. I'll give you... But I made a pretty good point. Who was sure if you could get rid of him or her? Yeah. So I have to look at the truth. And the truth is that getting what I want will not make me happy. It never did. I had happiness and pleasure confused. Pleasure is on the physical plane, and there's something out there that will bring it to me for a limited period of time. Happiness is internal. It's on the spiritual plane. And it's a side effect of having a healthy relationship with God and with all of you. And that's in part what these 12 steps are about. So that's about releasing my grip. One of my old ideas, when I was sober right around 11 months, I went to an old-timer at a meeting, and I said, you said that by the time I was sober a year, my sleep pattern would level out, and I'm still not sleeping. He said, I just watched you drink 2 big cups of coffee at a meeting here at 8 o'clock at night. And I said, caffeine doesn't affect me. And he said, if you're drinking a quart of scotch a day and smoking 5 joints, it won't. Oh. And I've been sleeping pretty good since then. It wasn't real good last night. So I wonder how many old ideas that I'm hanging on right now. I wonder right now. I zipped through a 28-day treatment program in 6 weeks. I've always been a quick study. I just pick things up fast. And I get back to my home in Nashville, and I set out to follow their aftercare plan, and they said to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and I did this psychobabble fourth step and some other stuff. But one of the things they told me to do was get a sponsor. And I was so insane as a newcomer that I was looking for a sponsor I could relate to. Isn't that crazy? I mean, because, you see, I tried to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and I only went to 87. I've forgotten 2 of them, but one particular night I was about to leave for the meeting, and one of my children was injured rather badly, and we raced to the hospital instead of me going to the meeting. It was the right thing. Everyone here would say that was the right thing, and so I missed that day. And I thought if you missed, you just missed. I didn't know you could go to 2 meetings in a day. Right? I got a case of newcomer thinking it's probably going to kill me if I don't get some help with it. And so I can't figure out you can go to 2 meetings in a day. Who can I relate to? Right? I can relate to somebody else that doesn't know what he's doing either. That's who I can relate to. I don't need a sponsor I can relate to. I didn't then. I don't need today. I don't need a sponsor I can relate to. I need a sponsor I would obey. But anyway, this man in this meeting, I kept looking at him and hearing when he talked, and his lights were on. His face was lit up. I wanted to feel like he looked. And I said, would you sponsor me? And he said, well, we'll see. Here's your first assignment. Assignment? You know, I thought a big brother was, a sponsor was more like a big brother, was going to kind of show you around and help you with all the small stuff, and maybe loan you some money and fix your wife, those sort of things. And I was wrong about that too. And so he gave me an assignment, and it took me a week, and I did it. And I said, okay, Jerry, I did what you said. Sponsor me. And he said, I'll sponsor you my way. And by this time, I was very nervous about that. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, you are too sick to stay sober on the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. You will need the program also. And I didn't have any idea what he was talking about. Page 59. He gave me what he said was the single best kept secret in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's the definition of the program. He said, the way we keep it secret, we read it at almost every meeting. That's how we keep it secret. It's immediately before step 1 on page 59. It says, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. He said the steps are not part of the program. The steps are the program. No steps, no program. Forgive me, I'm going to be real direct on this. I've been to too many funerals. Don't drink and go to meetings. You'll die from that. That'll kill you. He said hanging around a bunch of AA meetings wouldn't any more get me into recovery than moving into the garage to turn me into a 57 Chevy. He said it wasn't going to, same odds. He said it's not going to happen, that I'm going to have to do these 12 steps. And I was honest with my sponsor. I'd like to recommend that. I said, Jerry, I don't want to do the 12 steps. And he said, that's okay. I said, good. He said, as long as you do them. Jerry, I don't think we're communicating. He said, yeah, we are. He says, that's the definition of willingness. Willingness is when I do what my sponsor says, whether I want to or not. Bob said it so beautifully last night. It's got to get to my feet. The Al-Anons say we learn to trust the actions, not the words. Don't tell me, show me. Yeah. And so he said he didn't really care whether I wanted to work them or not. He said I was going to work the steps at the pace he set, the way he laid them out, or he was going to drop me like a bad habit. He meant it too. He meant that. But I played my trump card. I said, why? Now, just to be honest with you, when I ask why, I'm never looking for an answer. I'm looking for a fight. Right? I'm looking for something I can argue with so I can still win. That's what why is for me. And he said, I don't answer why questions for the men I sponsor. The reason is step 1, section B says your life's unmanageable. That means you are no longer in management. Why is a management question. Consequently, all the questions that begin with the word why have the same answer. And the answer is you don't need to know. And I hated that when he said it. And today I love it. It's one of my cornerstones. Because I always thought it was not knowing that made me crazy. It was needing to know that was making me crazy. And as I've released my grip on needing to know, I cannot know and be at peace because I know who knows, and that's good enough. But he said, I'll give you one why question, and this is it. Why do you have to do the 12 steps? He said, think of yourself as a garbage can. It's the only easy assignment he ever gave me. He says, what we'll do with these steps is we're going to dump you out. We're going to scrub the can and stand it back upright, and we're going to fish through your life. Most of it is garbage. We're going to throw it away. Portions are good. We'll keep them. For example, do you love your children? I said, oh, I love them so much. He said, wonderful. We'll keep that. When we get through with these steps, you're going to be a big, empty, clean garbage can with just a little bit of good stuff in the bottom. Our program's a bit like going to the dentist. We have to drill before we can fill. We have to dig this poison out. Like the dentist, we have Novocaine. We call it sponsorship. We call it home group. We call it fellowship. We call it love. It's not that hard. And the reason you have to do that is because alcohol's not your problem. What? Alcohol's not your problem. It's your answer. Alcohol makes you tall enough, smart enough, good looking enough, able to talk to the girls, an expert on many subjects, and it makes your skin fit, right? It makes your life the lubricant of life. So when we say to you, lay down the booze, we have not said put down your problem. We've said, let's lay down the only answer you have ever known. This is why I can't quit on my own. I mean, I can. I quit on my own over 2,000 times, right? Yeah, I'm a puker, and every time I threw up, I quit forever. Plus some other times when I was in trouble. But I couldn't stay quit. My problem is I can quit, but I can't get unthirsty. The day is always coming where something's going to happen where I'm going to be thirsty again. I don't have any way to stop that. And I would quit forever, which is somewhere between 20 minutes and about 2 months, right? That's forever. You guys know that. The earth people out there, they're very confused about how long forever is. It would scare you if you knew what they thought forever. Oh, my goodness. But, right? Yeah. So I can quit forever, but I can't get unthirsty. This is the peace I can't find on my own. Something's always coming where I'm going to get thirsty again. I own my own business. I'm going to close a big deal, make a lot of money. I'm going to get thirsty. I'm going to lose a big deal, lose a lot of money. I'm going to get thirsty. I'm going to get a new convertible. I'm going to get thirsty. I get a new boat. I'm going to get thirsty. I'm going to get a new girlfriend. I'm married, by the way. Get a new girlfriend. I'm going to get thirsty. Or the big one, my team is going to play on TV on Monday night, right? Something's always coming. So if I'm going to get, do y'all say one day at a time? Is that something y'all say here, one day at a time? For those of you who are new, there's a second line on one day at a time they're not telling you. What they really mean is one day at a time in a row. Right? With no breaks at all, ever. Right? That's actually what they mean. They haven't told you that. But okay. So if I'm going to stay sober one day at a time in a row, they got to give me this piece. I got to have this one. Page 60. First line, 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. It doesn't say a result. It says the. It's singular. It's my experience that spiritually awakened alcoholics do not drink beverage alcohol, and they don't ever get thirsty. Ever. I was rendered apparently permanently unthirsty sometime in December of 1984. If you've had the experience of driving around town with a two white knuckle grip on the steering wheel to keep the car from pulling into the liquor store to get you a drink or pulling into the pub, I know what that's like, but I haven't felt it in 22 and a half years. So if you're new, that's not the package. The package is get unthirsty. And the way we get to it is do the other 11 steps so that we can get that first promise in step 12, a spiritual awakening. With the spiritual awakening, I become unthirsty. Roman numeral 22, forward to the second edition. Forward to the third edition, I apologize. This is just before the doctor's opinion. You'll see the forward to the fourth, forward to the third. Halfway down the page, XXII. The basic principles of the AA program, it appears, hold good for individuals with many different lifestyles, just as the program is about recovery to those of many different nationalities. This may be the most important phrase in the book, the 12 steps that summarize the program. So what that says, according to my mentor, is that the 12 steps I see on the wall are a summary. All right, that's the little notes for someone who's trying to just slide by with a C minus. Did you ever try to get a C minus? Didn't want to do, afraid you might do too much? I wound up with an F a lot. Like, I'm afraid of getting a C minus in this. And I'm going to skip, I don't do the foreign language skills too well. Skip 2 lines. It says, they trace exactly the same path to recovery that was blazed by the earliest members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. So what's our path? It's the 12 steps. And then it describes the fellowship. This is a gift from another one of my teachers. There are 2 fellowships. The first one described in this next paragraph is the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, which you're in whenever you say you're in it, and no one can say you're not. It says, in spite of the great increase in the size and the span of this fellowship, at its core it remains simple and personal. Each day, somewhere in the world, recovery begins when one alcoholic talks with another alcoholic, sharing experience, strength, and hope. That's what we're going to do here today. The other fellowship is described on page 164. As you're turning to that, I would tell you, I have not intentionally memorized anything in this book, but a little over 20 years ago, some friends of mine and I were talking, and we kept saying, I need to get back to reading the big book. And so I'd say that for months, and I'd sit down on a Saturday afternoon and read 90 pages and have no retention. And we applied the one day at a time concept to reading the big book. I read 2 pages a day in the book. And I'll tell you, I did not read them today. I didn't get that good a night's sleep, and I got a late start today. But I've been reading 2 pages a day in the big book for over 20 years. And eventually you'll get to where you can do what I'm doing if you do that for 20 years. So it describes the other fellowship at the bottom of 164. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. And you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. It doesn't say to happy destiny. It says of. The road is the destiny. This is the destiny right now. My wife is doing the Al-Anon workshop down the hall, and I hope that's being recorded because y'all are being robbed if it's not. But she says this, that this second, right here, right now, this is the future we used to be terrified of, right here. Is everybody okay? Doing all right? Yeah, right here, right. How about now? Still okay? Good. How about now? that this is the destiny, and I need to be here. I need to be present for it. But I had to take the trash out first to be able to do that. That's what this thing is about. And as Jerry was telling me about the garbage can, and he said that alcohol's not your problem, it's your answer. He said it was necessary for me to have those changes. He said, you're going to need that big, empty, clean can, little good stuff in the bottom. Because one of these days, something heavy is going to slam your heart. He said, your father's going to die. And on that day, if you don't have that empty, clean space to store that pain in, while we love you back to spiritual health, you'll escape. And the only escapes you know are killing you and devastating everyone around you. Yeah. And it was the truth. And so we've described the other fellowship here on 164. And it's called the Fellowship of the Spirit. And it looks to me like the steps in narrative form. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. That could be actually any of the steps, I think, certainly. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows, 4, 5, 8, 9, and 10. Clear away the wreckage of your past, the same ones. Give freely of what you find. Clearly that's step 12. And join us, and I think that's step 1. First word, first step, we. I got to get out of the I business. We. Page 14. Bob touched on this last night. Last line, page 14. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he cannot survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. We promise you trials and low spots. That's why I have to have the empty, clean can. That's why I've got to have that space to store that pain in. It's because they're coming. I got here suffering from what I call the John Wayne syndrome. Y'all have seen John Wayne movies? About age 11, I got this mental image of what a man was. And I pretended to be that for the next 30 years. And it was things like big boys don't cry, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going. Never let them see your weakness. Never ask a stupid question. Get what you want, it'll make you happy. Never surrender, never give up, no matter what. Sound familiar to anyone? It's the act that around 99% of the men and about 96% of the women are doing when they get to AA. Based on the only truth I know, and that's that I'm not good enough. that I'm defective, there are things wrong with me that can't be repaired. And I'm a chameleon pretending to be the guy you want me to be in each situation. And so I get here with all of that load of stuff that has to be laid down. But I get here pretending to be something, knowing that I'm not. And what I had to learn to do here was to become who I really am. It was through the process of these steps that it happened to me. Back on 164 for a second, I'll turn it back over to Bob. Those of you who read the book regularly know that they sneak into your bedroom at night and add things. They added this one in June 2 years ago. For those of you who might have missed it, I think it would be a good grapevine feature. New things added to the big book since the first full paragraph, 164. Still you may say, but I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that, so you must remember that your real reliance is always upon Him. Here's the part they just added. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. Crave is a powerful word. I have craved fellowship all of my life. I've never had it, but I have craved it. And for those who were here last night or those who weren't, I flew for the United States Air Force for 5 years. I was a pilot, and I was in some pretty hot outfits. But I never felt like I belonged. And there were men that were bugging men on my airplane to change with them so they could fly with me, and I still didn't feel like I belonged. And it's because I was doing the act. I was always the actor, pretending to be the man I think you want me to be. And the actor can't participate in fellowship. The only part that can participate in fellowship is this part, and I'm not showing it to you. And what I learned to do here was to dig the poison out of my soul so that I could be comfortable in my own skin. And then so I could show you this part. And I'm willing to show it to you today. And today I participate in fellowship, and I still crave it. But the difference is that today I have it. As a direct result of placing myself unreservedly under the care of a sponsor who had done the 12 steps out of this book. I have never seen anyone in and out of the program, by the way. I'm not saying there aren't some. I haven't seen one. In and out of the fellowship, I see all the time. I have never yet seen anyone actually do the steps out of this book while being coached by a sponsor who has already done the steps out of this book and stay active carrying our message and drink again. Has anyone seen that? There's, 150 people in this room? 100? Nobody's seen it. I would say that we as a group stand by the first line of chapter 5. Rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. Bob?
Thanks, Scott. And Bob's still an alcoholic.
Yeah, Bob?
How many, I see a show of hands, how many people in this room have at some time in their life gotten to a place where they swore to themselves they would never drink again and meant it and then drank again after that? Wow. Okay, so really swearing off and really meaning it doesn't seem to work. Okay, we've established that. Why? Why can't we carry it out? Page 45, it says lack of power. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. That's true on so many levels. It's more than the lack of the power to stay away from a drink. It's also the lack of power to enjoy life, the lack of power to fit, the lack of power to come out and play, the lack of power to control my emotional nature, the lack of power to rise up out of my natural inclination to depression, lack of power to make this stop and leave me alone. Lack of power is my dilemma. And the book goes on to say we had to find a power by which we could live. Well, I had found a power by which I could live, and it was immediate and effective, and it got you downtown now. And that was 5 shots of whiskey. Alcohol was a tremendous source of power at one time in my life. But the problem with artificial power is that it has a tendency to dissipate. And towards the end of my drinking, if it was anything like towards the end of yours, I am drinking frantically, I'm drinking desperately, futilely, hoping to get the power I had once found in 4 or 5 drinks. Remember the power the power to be funny, the power to mix with people, to feel like you're a part of, the power to lift yourself out of a depression, the power that no matter how much fear and anxiety and worry was on you, you could just shrug it off. The power to feel significant, the power to be a part of. Alcohol at one time provided all of that. As a matter of fact, I believe that at one time in my life, before alcohol turned on me, it was the most immediate and effective treatment for the real secret inside disease of alcoholism that I've ever found. 5 shots of tequila was a spiritual experience. 7 shots, and you loved everybody. Remember that feeling, I love you, man. Remember that? You just well up with emotion and significance and connectedness. Now that was power. So what do you do when that power stops being available to you? The most desolate part of alcoholism is when you finally get, the most hopeless thing is when you finally get to that point where you really get it, that the one thing that you've relied on all these years does not work anymore. That doesn't mean that it won't get you drunk. It just won't do what it used to do. It won't, the power is, you've leached and wrung all the power out of it. So lack of power is our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live. And it says, well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself which will solve your problem. Boy, what a problem. At the end of my alcoholism, I felt like I was stuck. I was stuck in a trap I could not spring or get free of. I needed desperately the effect from alcohol, and consequently I tried it over and over again, and yet I could not get the effect. I got to a place that it talks about in Vision for You. It says that we eventually get to a place where we can't imagine life with alcohol or without it. Now, for years, in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, I couldn't imagine life without it. But now, when I started to get that it's turned on me, and it's awful, and I drink, and I'm full of self-pity, and it's bad, now I can't imagine life with it, not like that. And I can't really imagine life without it either, because abstinence feels like I'm doing time. It's a desolate, lonely, I don't quite fit, depressed place. So I am stuck in a trap I can't spring. Drinking is awful, and I can't turn it back to when it was good. And not drinking is awful, and all the therapy and religion and medications and everything I've tried doesn't seem to change that. I am absolutely stuck. That's a bad place to be. In that part of the book, in A Vision for You, it says, it calls it the jumping off place. It says when you get there, you'll wish for the end. And that's what had happened to me in 1978, as I went to a bridge to try to take my own life, and then consequently came off of that drunk with a new attitude, a new willingness to do all the things that never made sense to me. Did you ever notice that AA doesn't make sense to you until after you do it? Yeah, have you ever met a newcomer that came to AA in the middle of suffering from alcoholism, looked at the steps and went, oh yeah, that would work? No, nobody does that. Matter of fact, some of us have to be 10 years sober, bludgeoned to death by our emotions before we even approach the steps. I mean, what is it about us that not only is Alcoholics Anonymous the last house on the block, in Alcoholics Anonymous, the steps are the last house on the block. It's amazing. We'll go to great lengths rather than return to that from which we came, which we've always, and every time everybody that ever does that wishes they'd done it a long time before they did it. But we do it when we do it. We change when we change. We can see what we can see when we can see it, and we can only hear what we can hear when we can hear it. Lack of power is my dilemma. And this jumping off place where we wish for the end is a bad deal. When I was new in sobriety, a guy gave me a book. He gave me a box of old paperback books that he'd already read, and he gave me clothes. People in AA gave me clothes to wear. I had nothing. And one day I'm reading this book, and it was not a recovery book. It's just a novel. But in the novel was a section where they were talking about these scientists that were doing experiments on the human brain. And what these scientists did is they took these laboratory rats and they would put two tiny wire filaments into a part of the brain that in the book they referred to it as the pleasure center. It's the part of the brain that allows you to experience the euphoria from alcohol and drugs. It's where you get high. So they took these rats, they put these wires into the pleasure center of the brain, and they would pass a mild electric charge through those wires that would stimulate that pleasure center, and the rat would get high. So what they did is they hooked up the juice to a pedal in the rat's cage. The rat would learn he could hit that pedal and get high. So the rat would just lay on the damn pedal. He just would lay on the pedal and just pedal.
They understood that.
Yeah, you got that. He lays on that pedal till he dies, usually of dehydration, because he's not even drinking water. He's not eating. He's not having sex. He's too busy. He's partying. He's not doing anything except hitting that pedal. And he eventually dies, hitting the pedal. Well, these scientists, once they realized that, they'd get some of these rats that were just about dead, and they'd turn the juice off. Now the rat hits the pedal and nothing happens. And he hits it again and nothing happens, and again and again and again. And after countless futile attempts to turn the juice back on, the rat finally gets it, that the party once and for all is over. There is no more juice. And instead of being able to go back to being a rat, the rat curls up in a ball and lays on the floor of the cage to die. Because without the juice, there's nothing to live for. In 1978, I come into Alcoholics Anonymous after a failed suicide attempt. I can't drink, and I can't not drink. I am stuck, and I feel like that rat. I didn't come here, honestly, to get sober. I didn't come here for any kind of spiritual experience or spiritual way of life. I wasn't even interested. I don't even know what that means. I came here because I had nowhere else to go. And if God would have appeared before me and granted me one wish, it would not have been sobriety. If I could have honestly had my one wish, you know what it would have been? I would have asked God to let me drink like I drank when I was 18 years old again. I would have said to God, God, if you would give me 3 years of partying like that, you can kill me at the end of those 3 years, but let me have those 3 years. And instead, I got a big book and a sponsor and a home group. And little did I know that what I was being given was something that the essence of Alcoholics Anonymous is designed to do. Scott touched on it. AA is designed to do one thing and one thing only, and it's not to get you to quit drinking. You want to quit drinking, punch a cop. You'll quit. You'll quit for a while. Alcoholics Anonymous is designed to turn the juice back on. Remember the feeling when you were a kid and you just got lit up with your best friends and you were drinking and it was good. And you're part of, and life is, you're grateful for the feeling of being high. You're grateful for who you are. You're grateful for your friends. There's hope. Remember those feelings? It's almost as if alcohol awakened your spirit. and you came alive. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is designed to do. It's designed slowly and incrementally to create a transformation in the very spirit of who I am. And if that doesn't happen, if I cannot obtain through Alcoholics Anonymous, what I had once obtained through alcohol, I'm probably not going to stay here. Or I will probably have to get so medicated to stay in a state of abstinence that I'll become one of the walking zombies, because my emotions will have the best of me, as they always do. My mind will have the best of me eventually from this malady of my spirit. In our book, it says when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. So the good news is, you know how your head won't leave you alone? That's going to change. You know how you feel sick sometimes and you don't know why and you're tired before I worked the steps, when I first got sober, I was tired all the time because I'm a deep thinker. Deep thinkers wear themselves out. I mean, I don't even have to get out of a chair and I've already run the whole universe and I'm just worn out. That's why, you ever go up to unsurrendered newcomers that haven't worked the steps, you say, how you doing? The first thing they do is sigh. They go, hanging in there. I had a guy a couple years ago, I went up to this guy, Bernie, at one of the AA clubs, and Bernie's sober a couple years with the benefit of step none. I said, Bernie, how you doing? You know what he said to me? He said, well, I guess it's not bad if you don't weaken. You know, I don't say this. I will never say this to anybody. But sometimes I feel like saying, have you thought about drinking? I mean, wouldn't it be better than this? I don't say that. So something must change inside of me. Page 46 talks about the approach. Step 2 is so easy, and I make it into being so hard. I thought step 2 meant that I had to understand something about God, or that I had to know that there was a God. The only part that was easy for me to get about step 2 was the implication that I was insane. I could get that. I felt crazy. The middle of the page 46, the paragraph that starts with yes. Yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able, 1, to lay aside prejudice. A few simple words, a very difficult thing. Chapter 5, we had to let go of all our old ideas. That's what my prejudices are. Prejudice comes from 2 Latin words, meaning it means prejudgment. It's all my preconceived notions, all my opinions. It's all my perception. It's all what I think about God, about the universe, about me, about what I think is right. If I could lay those things aside and become childlike, become as simple and as humble as a child who knows nothing. To come to the table with God like that. I think one of the reasons that clergy often have such a hard time getting sober and staying sober is that they can't lay aside their prejudices temporarily because they believe they are the right kind of ideas. And the book isn't saying throw them away. It just says lay them aside, let's have an awakening, and then we'll revisit them. And what I found as I revisited some of the religion of my childhood, there's a lot of it was right on the money. Some of it, I still don't get to this day in the light of my spiritual awakening. In Bill's story, he talks about from that moment on, he will test everything in his life against the newfound power or God within him. Inside of you is something that you can, if you can remove you out of the way and your ego and all that crap out of the way, within your heart is a piece of the divine that you can measure everything against once you clear the channel between you and that. The problem is I got too much of me between me and God, just as I had too much of me between me and you. Alcoholism is a lonely business. I become so full of myself. No wonder I'm depressed. No wonder I'm lonely. No wonder I'm thirsty. So if I can lay aside my prejudice, I'll tell you about some of my prejudices. And I don't think they're uncommon. I had this fear and this sense that that I must merit God's help. I had this belief that I was capable of doing some things that would ruin God's day so badly that he wouldn't help me on that day. Or that I could do something so appalling that God would go, not Bob. Now, if that's true, I am screwed. Because what day do you need God the most? It's the day that you dislike yourself the most. Isn't it the time you came out of a restaurant on a tantrum because you told the waitress off because you went in there too hungry and she didn't wait on you quickly enough and you read her the riot act and now there's another place you can't go back to? Or you had some sex that it was so inappropriate and just so, you just had sex with someone you wouldn't want to be seen having lunch with. I mean, and you hate yourself, Isn't it at those times, or maybe your financial insecurity has driven you to cheat on money somewhere? And isn't it that those times when you dislike yourself the most that I need God's love the most? So that prejudice must go, or else I'm stuck in a trap I can't spring. I need God's help. I need that power. And the second thing it says, and express even a willingness to believe. And it says if I can do those two things, if I can just lay aside my old ideas, lay aside my prejudice, and express. And express would be make a demonstration. I'm big on demonstrations. I think in the realm of the spirit, physical demonstrations are just amazing. Because it's easy to think spiritual thoughts. It's more powerful to act them. Demonstrations are very powerful. And what the old timers had me do, and I didn't understand it, I was new, and I'm sort of somewhere between an atheist and an agnostic. I don't really know what I am, but I don't know if there's a God or not. And there's a part of me that's afraid that there might not be a God, and another part of me that is afraid that there might be. Because if there is a God, I am probably in a lot of trouble. Because God can see in the dark. That's not good for a guy like me. That's a bad deal. He can read your mind. He can read the judgmental, childish, petty thoughts, the vindictive thoughts. Oh. So I can't, I don't know if there's a God. And they said to me, they said, kid, we want you to physically get down on your knees every single morning and ask whatever is running the universe for help. And even though you don't believe, just do that. And then at night, before you go to bed, physically get down on your knees and thank whatever that was for that day of sobriety. And I went to meetings and I heard about people that prayed while they're driving in the car, prayed laying in bed, prayed sitting on the crapper they did. And I went to this guy and I said, how come I got to get down on my knees? Not everybody does. And he said, that's right, not everybody does. Just people with egos like yours. You see, I wasn't getting down on my knees for God. I was getting down on my knees for me. God loved me no matter what. I needed to humble myself because I have that kind of ego. And I started praying, and a funny series of coincidences started happening in my life. I mean, weird things. Like I got, just out of nowhere, I couldn't get a good job, and out of nowhere, it just popped up. I mean, it was perfect. It got me out of the halfway house I was living in, and I'll tell you, if I'd have stayed there another month, I don't think I'd still be sober. I had one roommate that was smoking pot, another one that was dealing heroin. I mean, my variety in there was precarious. There were guys chipping around, drinking all the time in that halfway house. And they gave me, this job just came to me with room and board, living in a treatment center for teenagers, being the house manager. It didn't give me a lot of money. It gave me just enough to start chipping away at a couple of men's and having $1 in the basket and a pack of cigarettes. It gave me just enough. If it had given me a lot more, I'd have maybe went to some saloon and told everybody how smart I was. But it was just enough. It was perfect. It was divinely crafted, and I was helping other people. Perfect for me. I was one of those guys that I had these emotional swings. I mean, a psychiatrist probably would have diagnosed me as manic depressive. You know, because I'd be up, I'm going to conquer the world, and then just be down. Up, and I'm going to just down. It was nuts. But that's part of getting sober. Everybody goes through that, right? It doesn't mean that it's not a medication deficiency necessarily. So I would go through these mood swings, and I'd be nuts. And I'd go to some meeting, and there would be a stranger talking about what's going on with me. And all of a sudden, I could have clarity. I couldn't see it by myself, trying to figure it out. Couldn't see it. One day, I'm at work, and by 11:30 in the morning, I am insane. I want to explode. I want to punch my boss right in the nose. I want to flatten that big fat nose of his right across his face. I want to quit my job. I've been very mistreated here, and they're taking advantage of me, and I'm just insane, and I don't know what to do, and I don't want to punch my cop, and I don't want to lose my job. So I take my lunch hour, and I go to a noon meeting. There's a stranger in the meeting, and he's talking about identical circumstances from what had happened to him at work, and then he said, and I called my sponsor and realized that I had to make amends to my boss. And it was like, oh my God, I would have never thought of that. And I had to go back that afternoon and make amends to my boss for being such an idiot all morning and having these little temper tantrums. And the minute I made amends to my boss, I felt clean and free, and all of a sudden, it's a good job. This is a good job. This is a good job. This is a good one. Do you ever, sometimes in the early sobriety, I used to feel mentally retarded. Oh, good job, yeah. How come I don't get that stuff on my own? But I started to see how God was working through the people and life itself. He was working through the actual fabric of the universe to help me. And I came to believe the only way a guy like me could, I suppose, through what started to happen to me in reality as a result of one little small thing, a minuscule effort to turn my consciousness towards. It was an expression of a willingness to believe. I hadn't come to believe yet, but I was willing to act as if. Scott does, I hope he talks about it some, this working hypothesis. And what had happened to me as a result of that is I started to come to know that there was something working in my life because of what was happening. In a lot of the major cities around the world, years ago, before they had electric street lights, they had gas street lights. And in some of the major cities before the technology, even to this day, there's parts of London and some other cities that they still have gas street lights. They do it for the ambiance today, whereas the electric would be a lot easier. But before they had the electric starters on the gas street lights and the computerization, they had a guy whose job it was to go up and down the streets of, let's say, London, with a pole with a flame on the end and a key. And he'd go up and down the streets at twilight, and he'd turn the key to turn the gas on. He'd reach up with the pole, and he'd light the street lamp. And he was called a lamplighter. And you could climb up at twilight to the top of the highest building in London and look out over the city, and no matter how hard you looked, you couldn't see where the lamplighter was. But you could always see where he'd been. And I could sit in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous at 2.5 years sober, and I couldn't see where God was. But man, could I see where he'd been. And more distinctly than seeing it in my life, as I could see it in the lives of the guys that got sober after me and some of the people I'd tried to help. Seeing the hand of God in your own life is hard to see, because the hand of God works very slow. But he's old. I mean, he's really old. And try to see the hand of God work in your life is like trying to stand in front of a mirror and watch your hair grow. I mean, it's not that it's not growing. It's a slow, tedious process. But I could see guys that I watched them get sober. These guys that their eyes were dead, that they were depressives. Men and women who had lost their children, that the state had taken them, and they would never see them again. Men and women who had done so much damage to their mother and father that they would never repair those relationships. Homeless people that would never be back on their feet. And then maybe 2 years later, you're seeing the guy at the meeting and he's got his kids with him, and they're looking up at their dad, and you realize that their dad is their hero. And something has changed there. And you realize that these depressed men and women you think are going to have to be medicated, they're just so screwed up. You see them with the new people that they sponsor, and they're not taking anything, and they're free, and they're live, and they're laughing. And something has changed within them. And you see these homeless guys, and you hear the stories at the coffee bar about, did you hear about so-and-so? Remember him? Remember he used to live in the bushes? Do you know he's buying a house, for God's sakes? And you wonder, how did that happen? You can't get from that place to that place. It would take a friggin' miracle. And maybe that's what we have here, a miracle. And that's the way a guy like me comes to believe. Scott's a pilot, and I have other friends that are pilots, and pilots talk about attitude. And it means something different than I would have imagined. Attitude is simply the angle of approach. You have a bad attitude, you're going to land on the side of a mountain. You get a good attitude, you come smoothly into the runway. And from the moment of my changing my angle of approach towards God and towards this life, things started to change. Take a break?
Yeah, let me stick on a couple of things.
Okay.
We got a couple of minutes here. I got here, and what I wanted to do is to work the promises and hope the steps came true. Yeah, that's my history. I hear you reading these promises, so I'm going to try to be that guy, because that's my history, and it didn't work that way for me. And by the way, if you're new and the steps look like they're designed to punish you, welcome to AA. That's how they look to us too, and we were wrong about that, and so are you. That what the steps actually were designed to do was to change my life, to dig the poison out of me. The old idea is I have to Give you a quotation from my hometown, the noted American philosopher Hank Williams Sr. Yeah. Oh, good. All right. He used to say there are a lot of good ideas in a pint, not so many in a quart. Yeah, so letting go of the old ideas. Page 21 is a little bit, we have a lot of descriptions. Actually, I'm going to do a different, we missed a couple of things that I want to talk about of general descriptions. You went for the fake. We're going to start on page 44. We don't have a description, we don't have a definition of alcoholic or alcoholism, but there are a number of descriptions, and generally I think they're pretty well wrapped up on page 44, fourth line. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. That pretty well, and it's not both, it's either. If you have either of those, if you have ever quit forever and meant it, sitting in the back of a police car, for example, or any other situation, or if you went out to have a couple and wound up going past that, you're probably alcoholic. The other piece of description that I like the best is on page 23. And I get a big laugh out of this one, but it's gotten me fit to a T. Paragraph begins in the middle of the page with a great description of me. Once in a while, he may tell the truth. I don't spread it around too thick. I save the truth for emergencies. There's a line in a country song that says, "You'll never catch me in a lie, but I'll tell you the truth at my own pace." Yeah, and Jack Nicholson had a great line in the movie As Good as It Gets. He said, "I'll always give you some version of the truth." Yeah, see, that makes perfect sense to us, that it can actually be done that way, and the fact is that it cannot. I think the other one I wanted to touch on is one of the slogans that's actually up on the wall. When I got to recovery, I was reading these things, but for the grace of God, and it said one day at a time, and I thought, oh, what in the world does that mean? And live and let live. But the one that there was only one I was doing. You know which one that was? Think, yeah. Oh, yeah. Think, yeah. Think, yeah. I'm all over that. And I don't find that in the literature. So I've taken it upon myself to figure out what that means. You're welcome to this if you can use it. It says think. That means 3 thinks is the limit. Okay, whatever it is, I can think about it once is okay, twice is good. I can think about it the 3rd time. If I have thought about it 3 times, I must lay it down. For if I were going to outthink it, I would have outthunk it in 3 thinks. If I go to the 4th think, I got a problem with step 1, section B. I'm trying to manage it. It is always the case. Turn, if you would, to the chapter Figuring It All Out. Right. So it's one of the things that I had to learn to stop doing, was trying to figure it all out. Just get out of that business and get literally into today. The one day at a time means 2 things to me. One, it means live only in this. It means don't drink today. But it also means live only in this day. That the first 10 steps are designed for me to clean up my past. I don't have to look over my shoulder. There's nothing gaining on me. The last 2 steps are about me putting my future in the hands of a loving God. We have a friend at home who says, I spend too much time in my head trying to clear away the wreckage of my future. So, first 10 steps, the past is clean. Last 2 steps, a loving God holds the future. Those 2 facts combine to free me to live one day at a time in this day. If I don't have both of those in place, I can't be here. So one day at a time is about living only in this day. It means I cannot afford to borrow pain or either pleasure from the past or the future. If I can reach far enough into the past or far enough into the future and find enough pain and pull it into today, I can make today so bad I can't stand it. That's what this whole thing is about, is to release the future into God's hands and with His help to clean up the past so that I can be comfortable. See this here? I'm stuck in here now. I'm trapped. I used to get out all the time. I'd go be somebody else. And you guys used to tell me you were a jet pilot. I really was, and they didn't believe me either. But it didn't matter. I got pictures of it up here, by the way, if you want to see them. But I'm stuck in here now. I can't get out. So the first thing I had to do was to clean it up so I could be comfortable in here, a day at a time. We're going to take a really long break. This one is going to be 16 minutes and 8 seconds. We're going to start on time. Please be